four times that we have had. So we'll continue with this, the security and traditional and non-traditional challenges. It has been the endeavor of India Foundation, as I said, all the four times that we discuss and understand the perceptions of various countries, which are either the littorals or they have the interest, their interest in the Indo-Pacific. And that may answer some of the questions of our distinguished Chinese ambassador who's here, that very much when Prime Minister Modi says it is inclusive and it's a rule-based order, if you are okay with that, then of course security is a common reason to be together. I just want to quote Admiral Mike Mullen, who mentioned about in 2000, I think that was 7, we were walking together on our aircraft carrier. And he said that, he was CNO at that time, and he said that we require 1,000-ship navy in the world to handle all the traditional and non-traditional challenges worldwide. So therefore, I think that Indo-Pacific is just one, subset of what he had said. I have to be here for 2 sessions. So let me first invite our distinguished speaker from Madagascar, Ratsimandau Tahirimiakadaza, General Secretary, Secretary General, Minister of Foreign Affairs. He's a career diplomat, and request him to make his presentation. Tahir. Okay.
Thank you, Chairperson. Thank you. Honorable Ministers, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, Madagascar is honored to participate for the first time in this important conference as part of its effort to build a maritime-oriented development policy and its contribution to the international effort to promote a secured and prosperous Indian Ocean. At the outset, allow me to thank the organizers of this conference, namely the India Foundation, the RSIS from Singapore, and the government of Maldives for the warm hospitalities extended to us, and chiefly for giving us an opportunity to join the effort of bringing peace and stability in the Indian Ocean region. As you all know, Madagascar is the 4th largest island in the world, located in the center of important international maritime routes of the Eastern and Southern Africa and the Indian Ocean region. With more than 5,000 kilometers of coastline, hundreds of small islands, and more than 110,000 kilometers of territorial water, ocean, and particularly the Indian Ocean, is a vital interest for Madagascar. Since 80% of our international trade is done by the sea, including the world's best shrimp, vanilla, cocoa, mineral sand as ilmenite, refined nickel, and heavy crude oil. It is then obvious that the security of the Malagasy maritime area and all of the Indian Ocean becomes a key issue for Madagascar and a priority of its foreign policy, mostly towards the regional level. Much has been said on the Indo-Pacific region and the challenges ahead. For my part, I will focus on the Eastern and Southern Africa and Indian Ocean region due to its strategic location at the crossroads between America, Europe, Africa, and Asia, with important world maritime routes such as the Suez Canal, the Red Sea, the Gulf of Aden, the Cape of Good Hope, and the Mozambique Channel. 7,000 ships a day are transiting and operating in the Indian Ocean region, offering the region significant opportunities for port and maritime activities. The challenges our region is facing include climate change, natural disaster, ocean and marine resources conservation, food security, drug and arm trafficking, human trafficking, transnational maritime crimes, terrorism, illegal and unregulated and unreported fishing. Conscious of the need to respond effectively to the alarming trends emerging, and as the biggest island in the region, Madagascar has played a constructive role in arresting and judging Somali pirates and facilitating international coalition mission against piracy through its first Navy base in the north of Madagascar, facing the water of Kenya and Somalia. We also host the Regional Maritime Information Fusion Center in connection with that of other countries like Singapore and India. We have arrested foreign vessels practicing illegal fishing and transporting smuggled natural resources. In human trafficking, I would like to commend the IOC, the Indian Ocean Commission member states cooperation and the support of different governments such as the US and the Chinese government. The recent development in the region has shown that the security threat in our region can affect the world's security and economy. Under the vision of our President, His Excellency Mr. Andra Joel, and his initiative for the emergence of Madagascar, the government of Madagascar developed an integrated maritime strategy which includes the sustainable exploitation of our blue economy and securing our EEZ. We make sure that our maritime space is not subject to external power rivalry. Furthermore, the government of Madagascar has built capacity of our Navy and increased the Navy presence in the strategic point nationwide. Madagascar integrated maritime strategy is in line with its obligation as an IOC member state and with the African Integrated Maritime Strategy and the SDGs 14. Regarding the security of the Indian Ocean, Madagascar is of a view that the region should be a place of peace and prosperity, with Africa and Asia the fastest growing economy. In this regard, we are sharing the Prime Minister Modi's vision on security and growth for all. We need to strengthen constructive mechanism of cooperation to tackle the challenges and to coordinate every initiative along the Indian Ocean region. The islands should play a strategic role in facing those challenges. Most of the islands do not have enough capacity to deliver, and a mechanism of coordination and cooperation which consists of mutualization of means is necessary. If the threats are interconnected, we also need a coordinated and interconnected responses. Our Navy is closely working with several countries' counterparts. We have hosted so many foreign vessels as part of our Navy cooperation. Madagascar is also going to organize by the end of this year a summit on maritime security that is focused on environment and transnational crimes issues. During the TICAD-7 summit in Japan, Madagascar has been designated to lead the TICAD initiative on security of the Indian Ocean. Finally, we are open to any constructive cooperation on maritime security and maritime economy. I thank you for your kind attention.
You just heard the ambassador talking about what Madagascar is doing. They are fully clutched in, as we say in the military, with the issues of security and trade with most of the countries, particularly India. More and more countries are looking at the Sagar model, the security and growth of all in the region, particularly the ones in the Western Indian Ocean. Mainly because if you look at Indo-Pacific, it does not really address the Western Indian Ocean very well. It's generally the areas which are under the purview of the Indo-Pacific Command, which does not include the Arabian Sea or further westwards from India. And that is the area of great concern to every country. You know, the amount of terrorism, the tensions, and all kinds of security challenges, and so to the trade. We have had crisis in the Straits of Hormuz. So that's an important part. May I invite questions? Yes, Dr. Rajamohan, sir.
If you could tell us a little bit on how the island states in the Western Indian Ocean, that is, there are 4 or 5 of them, that you all have the similar problems, that while Africa becomes a larger regional identity, but there's also the Indian Ocean islands identity, there's some measure of regional cooperation. So how does that develop? How do you see from Madagascar the prospects of integrating Western Indian Ocean islands into a larger framework?
I think it's, thank you, Professor. I think it is, we have a coordinated action, not only amongst us, the IOC member state, but we are linked to the East African, sorry?
If you can explain what the Indian Ocean Commission is.
Okay, this is a regional mechanism of cooperation, which includes political cooperation, security, economic, and maritime security. It is expanding from the last ministerial meeting that they had in Comoros. So we are part of the initiative that is taken at the level of IOC is fully aligned to the regional blocks where we belong, and it happens that Comoros, Madagascar, the Seychelles, and Mauritius, we also belong to COMESA, and we also belong to SADC community. So we are trying to not duplicate what is going on, but try to be in line with what has been developed at the level of SADC, COMESA, and the AU, and in a broader picture, the UN.
Sorry, any other questions?
In the back.
Yeah, please. At the back, yeah.
Hello, sir. Yeah, my question is
Please introduce yourself.
Yeah, this is Dr. Vimal Pandey from India, University of Delhi. My question is, as we know that the Indian Ocean Commission has 5 countries, and one of the countries, Reunion, which is a part of France, dominated by the France. My question is that all the 5 countries, all the member countries of the IOC, what they believe, how they taken of France domination in the Western Indian Ocean region in IOC. That's my question is that how these 5 member countries take the France as, because during many times we see that France shown its willingness to be the part of IOC, Indian Ocean, IORA, ORA.
Can you ask the question, please? You are giving background. He's aware. Ask him the question, please.
That's my question is.
Yeah.
That's how the member countries take France domination in this region.
Okay.
In IOC.
Okay. Thank you very much. I know there are many narratives on French presence in the region. France is a member of IOC through the island of Reunion. We must say that it has been a challenging task as well to convince sometimes our African brothers on the relevance of what we are doing as a group of countries, not as a French dominated country. Domination, it depends on what on the perspective you take it. But we, as a sovereign countries, we have to stand for our own sovereignty and prosperity. So France is there as another country who's cooperating with us, and now the orientation of our diplomacy is very clear now. We are open to any country that is bringing cooperation, just to express this sovereignty. I cannot talk about the other countries' perspective, but the beauty of the Indian Ocean is you have various countries that belongs to Commonwealth, to Francophonie, and the Minister of Mauritius just told me that only in Mauritius you can find a place where you can speak Hindi as well, French and English. So I think it depends on how each country engage with France or with the UK or any world power that is present in the region. But the main thing is we need to know what we really need. Then stand for that if we believe that this is the good way for our development. So it depends on your capacity, I think, to negotiate with them, knowing that every country stands for its own interests. So it really depends on your domestic capability of negotiating with them. I don't believe that the IOC is French-dominated organization, knowing that most of the countries like the Seychelles, Mauritius, they also have they are also part of the Commonwealth countries. So.
Well, thank you very much, Ambassador. May I invite General Sani, Arun Sani, to come and present a memento to the Ambassador. Thank you very much, Ambassador. Let me now invite Ambassador Michael Kiboino, who's the Director of Oceans and Security, Ministry of Foreign Affairs in Kenya. He's a career diplomat, and he is a lawyer. He practices in the High Court. He's got a LLB and a Master of Law degree from the University of London.
Thank you, Chairperson. Allow me to make a small correction because I need my job when I get back home tomorrow. Yes, I'm Director of Peace and Security, not Oceans and Security, at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. Chairperson, Honorable Ministers, Excellencies, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, may I first take this opportunity to congratulate the India Foundation with its powerful organizing committee and all their partners for what is truly an insightful forum that it has been. And I also would like to express my appreciation to the organizers and the government and the people of this incredibly beautiful country of Maldives for the warm reception and hospitality. In addition, I would like to convey the appreciation of the Cabinet Secretary of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Kenya to our Indian colleague and the leadership of the Indian Foundation for inviting her to this IOC 2019. Unfortunately, she was not able to come because of competing demands on her schedule. But I convey our warm regards and wishes for a successful event. Allow me to share our perspectives and experiences in the Western Indian Ocean, particularly the Horn of Africa, on issues that are relevant to IOC 2019 theme, that's securing the Indian Ocean region, traditional and non-traditional challenges. Excellencies, Kenya and many countries in Africa are increasingly and deliberately prioritizing the blue economy as the next frontier for creating employment and economic growth. You will recall that over 16,000 participants from across the world had a strategic conversation during the Sustainable Blue Economy Conference that took place in Nairobi in November 2018. These engagements were inspired by the unique global opportunity to build greater prosperity for the blue economy resources for the present and future generations. For us in Kenya, the Indian Ocean is the single most important and indispensable resource for our blue economy strategy. Yesterday, we've had a lot about the importance of the Indian Ocean region, the population that takes care of 2.5 billion, and the sea lands that it provides. I will not go into that, but I'd like to say that the potential of the blue economy cannot be realized in an environment of security threats, such as pollution, piracy, illegal, unreported, and unregulated fishing, and other illicit activities around the water bodies. Yet, it is widely acknowledged that the maritime domain for many states in the Western Indian Ocean region is inundated by these threats. Indeed, the emerging threats such as maritime terrorism, climate change, and increasing competition over resources have emerged as grave security threats that can fundamentally undermine the prospects of the blue economy, particularly in developing economies such as ours. I want to zero in on three of the major concerns. And the first one is pervasive conflict and state fragility. The Horn of Africa, as many would acknowledge, remains a volatile region characterized by state fragility, resulting from incessant interstate conflict and poor governance. Arising from state fragility is the existence of ineffectively governed spaces due to weak or insufficient security apparatus. On the other hand, and governed spaces, particularly those in close proximity to the ocean, provide conditions that facilitate maritime insecurity. Clearly, it would be futile to institute measures to address challenges at sea without attending to the land-based root causes. In this regard, Kenya, together with other countries in the region and internationally, have continued to invest heavily in peace and state-building processes with a view to ensuring state effectiveness by, amongst others, deepening democratization values and practices, entrenching inclusive political and economic participation, and pursuing a shared regional vision of prosperity. One of the threats which is a factor of state fragility is terrorism. Kenya has borne the brunt of terrorism orchestrated by Al-Shabaab, a terrorist group with connections with Al-Qaeda. The people of Somalia also continue to face incessant attacks by Al-Shabaab. If not swiftly and decisively dealt with, Al-Shabaab could soon take control of the waters of the Western Indian Ocean and beyond. For this reason, contributes significantly in denying Al-Shabaab the financial resources that are critical for funding its terror activities. We believe that all countries that recognize terrorism as an existential threat should support this cause. The second issue is about emerging extra-regional dynamics that could have destabilizing effects in an already volatile region. In recent years, the Horn of Africa has become a theater of increasing interest, which add to the mix that catalyzes the inherent fragility. Today, the Horn of Africa has to contend with uncoordinated and often competing external actors, evidenced by an unprecedented surge of military and naval bases, as well as a scramble for ports along the African coastline of the Red Sea and the Western Indian Ocean. A lot of the interest that the Horn of Africa region has and continue to attract are well-intentioned. However, they bear a huge risk portfolio in terms of conflict that could result from the growing rivalries and competition among various actors. The challenge for us is how to manage these interests in a manner that secures the interests of the regional countries while guaranteeing the rights and freedoms that countries have to enter into bilateral arrangements with foreign powers, as well as facilitating international cooperation in establishing and maintaining a secure marine domain. The third item of concern is climate change, which is the defining security and development challenge of our generation and is certainly the world's most gigantic externality. The impacts of climate change are manifest in many ways, including rising sea levels, frequent storms, heat waves, protracted and intense droughts that result in conflicts in developing world over dwindling resources. In fact, it is no longer a theoretical phenomenon. It's real for us in Africa, but perhaps it's more real for large ocean states such as this beautiful Maldives, as their very existence are threatened as a consequence of rise in sea level. And yet, paradoxically, they are the least contributors to the things that lead to global warming. Kenya has a good record of commitment to climate change response, as underscored by our ratification and implementation of key relevant international instruments. Our commitment is further exemplified by our investment on renewable energy, which now accounts for over 70% of our installed capacity, compared to the world average of 24%. Inasmuch as the mitigation of the negative effects of climate change is critical, it's just a treatment of the symptoms. Greenhouse gas emissions must ultimately be slashed to avert the devastating levels of global warming. Consequently, the collaborative fight against the scourge of climate change entails every nation reaffirming their commitments under the Paris Agreement by doing their respective parts towards the goal of limiting global temperature rises to 1.5 degrees. This requires unprecedented transitions in all aspects of society, including the transformation of energy, agricultural, urban, and industrial systems, engagement of non-state actors, and integration of climate action into broader public policy and development frameworks. Having a robust institutional mechanism is critical not only for evolving norms and rules, but also the implementation of such norms and rules. However, the challenges we face are not necessarily because of lack of institutional mechanisms, because we are not short of them. Indeed, we have our main institutional mechanism being the Indian Ocean Rim Association, which has become a critical tool for strengthening regional cooperation and sustainable development within the Indian Ocean region. In the Western Indian Ocean, IGAD and AU have marine security strategies, but within the regions, we have quite a number of other mechanisms that have been mentioned in this meeting, one of them being the Djibouti Code of Conduct, and the other one which was mentioned by the Honorable Minister from Seychelles is the Program to Promote Regional Maritime Security, MAS. And then we have the Indian Ocean Commission, which has become a champion for the cause of small island states in regional and international fora. We also have the contact group on piracy of the coast of Somalia. And Kenya will be privileged to chair this mechanism from January 2020, taking over from Mauritius. And on this note, I would like to commend the government of Mauritius for the strides made during its tenure. Indeed, we are fully in support of the decision of Mauritius to consult the UN Secretary General today over the unfortunate and ill-advised release of convicted pirates by Somalia. This action is indeed a setback in our collaborative efforts to secure the Indian Ocean. Allow me to conclude by emphasizing the need for robust institutional frameworks for managing the threats to regional peace and human security through the strengthening of multilateral cooperation based on mutual respect, equality, and in line with international law. We are not necessarily calling for the creation of new mechanisms, but rather underscoring the fact that any such mechanism must of necessity bring together littoral states, regional non-littoral states, and key stakeholders. The main priority for such mechanisms should be to formulate principles and rules of engagement designed to ensure that activities in the Indian Ocean are well coordinated with a view to guaranteeing security and sustainable use of the ocean consistent with international law. Finally, coordination and collaboration between regional and sub-regional mechanisms is key to facilitating synergy in activities being undertaken to address the challenges in the Indian Ocean region. Thank you for your attention.
Take a few questions, and all I can say about Kenya that we have been associated both at the level of the governments and the Navy for many years, and it used to be a very peaceful place. I remember about 18, 19 years back when we paid a visit. The city of Mombasa, there are many vehicles, but there were no traffic lights in the city, and yet everybody followed the rule and regulations. So that's 18, 19 years ago. But, this movement of Al-Shabaab and other issues which the ambassador has pointed out, but they have done a lot of contribution to the blue economy and how to develop, and they are the champions of that part of the world as far as blue economy is concerned. Can I invite some questions? Yeah, Prabhaji?
Thank you very much for your very illuminating talk. Just wanted to ask you, after the Garissa attack, it is very clear that there are a number of Al-Shabaab supporters within Kenya. And I just wanted to know what steps you are taking to identify them, what steps you are taking to identify other people in Tanzania who are said to be moving into Kenya, and again, refugees from Somalia who are coming into the refugee camps in Kenya, because the Garissa attack, as he said, was one of the most horrific we have seen in the past few years. That is one. And the second, we want to know what is the Kenyan stand on Somaliland? How do you plan to reconcile what is happening over there, given that many countries have started directly dealing with Haradare? How does that affect the regional stability of the area? Thank you.
Thank you for two very good questions. Regarding terrorism, of course, the attack at Garissa, at the university in Garissa, was horrific, just as bad as the others. Westgate, the Dusit D2. So we cannot say one was worse than the other. All of them are bad, and we abhor them. And I mean, there's a lot that's going on within the country, but also using regional frameworks to address the challenge of terrorism. We have a center that's fully dedicated to efforts to rid our country of acts of terror. I think there's something that you mentioned about Somali refugees, but I think more important is that that Al-Shabaab has also moved beyond just Somalia and is taking advantage of young people, those who are unemployed, and to radicalize, to recruit, radicalize, and deploy. So so more and more we're seeing not just people from Somalia, but also Kenyans, Tanzanians getting involved. But the security agencies are working around the clock, and I can assure you that Kenya is safe for you to travel because we've taken decisive measures to protect ourselves. And we continue doing it. That's why we've been we've petitioned the UN Security Council to have Al-Shabaab included in 1267 sanctions regime, because we would like to reduce or make sure that they do not have the capacity. So hopefully in time we'll have it included under that regime. Your other question was Somaliland. That's a very political question. I think for Kenya, we recognize Somaliland as part of Somalia. I believe even for the countries that have presence there, they have presence there because of interest. They have nationals. For Kenya, we have over 15,000 Kenyan nationals in Somaliland. So if we deal with Somaliland, then it is to protect the interests of Kenyan nationals who are providing different services there. Thank you. I hope I've answered your question.
Any other questions from the audience? Right, thank you. Can I invite Alok Bansal, Director, India Foundation, to kindly come on stage and present a memento to the Ambassador. Thank you, Ambassador. Our next speaker is Abdullah Mirghane, the Director of the Foreign Minister's Cabinet of Comoros. He is in the Foreign Ministry, has a separate cabinet, and he belongs to that cabinet.
Excellencies, honorable assistants, distinguished assistants, assalamu alaikum. The Indian Ocean has an area of around 73.5 million square kilometers. It is enclosed on 3 sides by land masses and comprises all the littoral and possesses many island states. The continent of Africa is part of Indian Ocean, east coast of the continent. Economic development of African countries depends on international trade and vital maritime transport. Maritime security is a major challenge for the poorer coastal and islands countries on the African and Indian Ocean region that have large zones of maritime jurisdiction. You know that more than 14 of Africa imports and exports are led by sea, and some of the most strategic entries for international trade are in maritime ports in Africa. Comoros is an archipelago with 4 islands, and we depend of maritime, and we depend of Indian Ocean, East and East Africa. So the Indian Ocean region, this region faces many traditional and non-traditional safety and security challenges. But African maritime area include many problems like transnational organized crime. It has been all the speakers here said about these organized crimes such as piracy, terrorism, trafficking of person, illicit trafficking of drugs, weapons, etc., etc. So the degradation of ocean health, criminal exploitation and marine resources, with another big challenge, the climate change, have repercussion on environmental security, as well as environmental crimes such as shipping, wrecking and oil discharge, and throwing away of toxic wastes along our coasts, especially in Somalia. The traffic of merchandise in container has more than about 8 million containers are moving around the world every day. But our small countries are not, they have not the ability, and the customs official in our countries have not the ability to check the content of these containers, and these can transport and have inside, can handle inside contraband to illegal substances. So, ladies and gentlemen, all these problems have a significant impact on local economies and the Indian Ocean people way of lives. We believe that protecting territorial waters and exclusive economic zone is the minimum for our small countries, the minimum vital to protect our exclusive economic zone, preventing maritime crimes, for example, for illegal fishing, which is very, very important. For example, Comoros is in the canal of Mozambique Channel, and in Comoros we have especially a lot of tuna around the Comoros, because we have an upwelling in the islands, and the tuna is very important. But we have now the capacity to control and to protect this tuna. So our maritime resources require significant law enforcement capacity in our country. And these countries in these small islands, we need to share tools, information, and have maritime government structure to protect our country. Some other West Indian Ocean states, notably, we speak about Somalia, Yemen also, have large maritime zone, and they are fish rich also, but it is the same problem. We can't control and these resources. They are open to illegal, unregulated, and unreported fishing. The impact of natural disaster on Indian Ocean states is aggravated by several factors, including densely populated areas, poverty, and low level of development, and climate change. The island states of Madagascar, Mauritius, Comoros, Maldives, Seychelles, for example, have maritime zone of around 1 million square kilometers or more. It's very difficult to control and to have the metrics of that. Regarding of fishing in the islands of Indian Ocean, it is a serious issue for the coastal population caused by high demand, diminution of fish stock in other parts of the world, and increasing number of fishing vessels from outside of the region. It is important for Comoros to participate to some programs in a national program, regional program, and global level to check and verify the identities of these fishing vessels who comes in our region. African countries in the region are more concerned about local issues of governance, I said it, poverty, diseases, internal security, than the broader strategic issues that concern the wider region. That it has been said from 2008 to 2012, Somalia has shown that maritime insecurities are interconnected and that the capacity of African states are insufficient to prevent crime at sea and to realize the development potential of the maritime economy. The immoral situation opened the way to challenge new synergy and contribute to produce more sustainable management of the world ocean resources and the promotion of sustainable future for the island and coastal communities. But other forms of maritime crime arise, including illegal trade, trafficking and drugs, terrorism, etc. So we need cooperation. We need cooperation between regional countries and between those with a leading in the regional security like India or other South Africa, for example, who are leaders in security. The African Union has developed the 2050 African Integrated Maritime Policy. It makes a clear link between maritime safety and human security. However, the strategy provides a framework for cooperation, but much more still needs to be done. Obstacles to effective cooperation include lack of capacity, I said it, and also political will, as well as maritime boundary and sovereignty disputes in the north of the boundary of East Africa. 9 countries of West Indian Ocean, Kenya, Tanzania, Djibouti, Somalia, Maurice, Seychelles, Réunion, Comoros, and Madagascar, organize the supervision of an ambitious program of maritime security called MASE. MAZE program, the MAZE program is promoting maritime security and safety in the Western Indian Ocean, coordinated by IGAD. IGAD is the Intergovernmental Authority on Development, who has received the cooperation of Union European and finance of Union European through the Regional Maritime Security Program, MAZE. The funding is support IGAD's integration agenda by improving maritime corridors and be coherent and in line with other regional integration activities in the Eastern and Southern Africa and Western Indian Ocean region. IGAD alternatively livelihood through development initiative. Its goal is to combat piracy and reinforce maritime coordination and mechanism of peace in the region. The specific objective of the program is to strengthen the capacity by implementation of the regional strategy and action plan against piracy and for maritime security. The program has 5 results to be achieved in 4 different locations. First, against piracy, maritime coordination mechanism is reinforced. All actors in this project, namely IGAD, COMESA, the Community of East Africa, and the Indian Ocean Community, will each have different complementary roles. Second, national and regional capacities in legal matters, legislation, infrastructure for the arrest, transfer, detention, and trial of pirates, and development and health together. Third, the regional capacity to break the financial network of pirates. This is very important because the finance of these terrorism activities come by different, no country in East Africa can control, can know where come the finance. So one of the goals is to cut the financial network of pirates and their sponsors to decrease structural sustainable economic impact of piracy. Fourth, national and regional capacities for sea action have to be improved. And 5, regional coordination and exchange of information are improved. So the aim was to develop cooperation to challenge traditional and non-traditional dangers in the region of West Indian Ocean. At least the importance of the Indian Ocean as a major transit area for international trade is evident in the fact that half of the world container ships, 1/3 of the world's bulk cargo traffic, and 2/3 of the world's oil shipment across its water annually. So Comoros, my country, needs a safe and secure Indian Ocean for social economic development. Maritime security includes elements of international peace and security, sovereignty, territorial integrity, political independence, security from crimes, sea, and protection of resources and environmental security, etc. The association, IORA, Comoros is a member of this association, covering the vast maritime zone, about 22 coastal states and 9 dialogue partners, is an important actor in the partnership in the Indian Ocean and in our region. So these include maritime governance, capacity building, development, national legislation development, and poverty extermination. Our meeting here in Maldives attempts to involve a maritime security strengthening to help overcome these challenges. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Abdullah. I think that was very well made points. Let me just have the right of asking you the first question. Comoros is a member of the Francophonie. How much does France actually contribute towards your maritime security?
France is an important partner of Comoros. There is two faces of this question, because when Comoros become independent, France don't leave all Comoros. He stay in one of island, Mayotte. And after 40 years of discussion, and we decide, Comoros and France decide to solve this problem bilaterally. France and Comoros discuss now, have discussion, regular discussion to have a solution from this problem of our sovereignty of Comoros. The second problem is that Comoros and France, we was colonized by France, so we have a very tight relationship. You know, for example, we are 800,000 people in Comoros, but there are 800,000 people in France from Comoros who live in France, because our independence came very later, in 1975. In the past, we were French territory, you know. So French has an important role in Comoros because of historical relation.
Any questions from the audience? Right, if there are no questions, can I invite Mr. Shakti Sinha, the director of Nehru Memorial Museum and Library at Delhi, to felicitate Mr. Abdullah. Thank you very much. That brings me to the last session, session 7 of this conference. And we have 3 serving armed forces officers to make the presentation. The first one, let me invite Commodore Edward to give his perspective of the United Kingdom's involvement in the Indian Ocean. Well, he is also the current commander of the Combined Task Force 150, which is meant for counter-terrorism. He is based in Bahrain. He is a submariner, so you can ask him many questions on this. He's commanded a Trafalgar-class submarine, HMS Tireless and Toby. He's also been the operations officer of the UK component commander in Bahrain. He's also been the UK's defense attaché in Cairo. All yours.
Thank you, sir. Your Excellencies, distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen, may I too begin by saying what a privilege it is for me to have this opportunity to speak to you this afternoon. I'd like to thank the Indian Foundation and partner institutions for organising this prestigious and important event, and of course, the wonderful Maldives for hosting it. The Indian Ocean is an area of great interest to all of our nations, and to me personally, in my role as the UK commander of Combined Task Force 150, a coalition maritime security force charged with delivering security in the Indian Ocean region. We're part of the Combined Maritime Forces, which are a 33-nation coalition of like-minded nations committed to security in the maritime domain. Now, as a naval officer, and like some other distinguished delegates here I see, the sea has been my life, both on it and under it. But the sea is also the lifeblood and vital artery for commerce, trade, and economy. Nowhere is this more true than in the Indian Ocean, which sits at the crossroads of international trade, that critical link between the world's economic powerhouses of the Euro-Atlantic and the Indo-Pacific regions. Yesterday and today, we have heard from numerous renowned speakers about the prominence and prestige of the Indian Ocean, so I will not cover all ground. Suffice to say, it's important for so many reasons to so many nations here represented. The Indian Ocean is more than simply a transit corridor. It's a populated littoral zone, has areas of significant rapid economic growth in their own right. Growth underpinned by rich natural resources found in the huge expanse that is the Indian Ocean. But forgive me to coin a phrase, all is not plain sailing. Substantial threats to this legitimate and prosperous activity endure. The everyday expansive and legal activity of trade, fishing, and leisure is diametrically opposed by those who seek to use the sea for unlawful purposes. Malign activity comes in many forms and guises, with non-state actors engaged in the smuggling of arms, people, and narcotics, either to further their own ill-gotten gains or fuel terrorism and violent extremism that threaten our livelihood and prosperity. Using the innocent to disguise their nefarious activity and exploiting the freedom of the sea, the perpetrators have also resorted to piracy with no regard for international law. Whilst piracy has reduced since its peak in 2010, mostly due to the consistent patrolling by many of those nations represented here today, it is suppressed, not eradicated. It will not take a great deal of effort for piracy to re-emerge should maritime forces fail to provide that level of deterrence. The maritime security challenge is further compounded by the increase in trade, largely owing to globalization and mass migration from unstable countries and the ever-present spectre of natural disasters. I think it's fair to say that the Indian Ocean is contested, congested, and complicated. The technological developments to promote security, governance, prosperity, and sustainability that we leverage are also available to our adversaries. They too have become smarter. While the fourth industrial revolution allows us all to conduct our business in a more interconnected, agile, and global manner, it also offers the same level of technology to those that would wish to do us harm in the most complex of manners, all of which are plausibly deniable and virtually untraceable. So we need to embrace technology in the maritime domain, making sure we understand the impact of the latest developments, and we need to drive science and technology to the heart of everything we do, which will enable us to stay ahead of the curve. Simply put, we need to be innovative, imaginative, and inventive to enhance our ability to combat these varied and complex threats. The UK in this context is a global leader, answering tomorrow's problems today through our technical expertise. But the threat I have described cannot be countered by one single entity or nation. We all have a keen interest in ensuring that the important economies which this area serves are protected from those unwanted shocks. I offer that we're all responsible for suppressing and, wherever possible, stamping out malign activity that is interwoven in our daily fabric. On protecting security, we all have a shared interest in ensuring we protect the free flow of legitimate trade across the ocean and protecting that trade from maritime crime, including piracy and the trafficking of illicit goods. As the UK commander of CTF 150, I am personally responsible for the coalition task group that seeks to stifle illegal maritime activity on the high seas that can also fund terrorism, a destabilized activity for all of our nations. To combat some of these threats, we need a meeting of minds and a sharing of maritime domain awareness and support to third country capacity building to promote our mutual prosperity and deny the use of this vital artery by those who seek to promote their malign activities. But again, no one country can take on this task alone, which is why we must cooperate and build those sustainable regional and international networks to ensure that the free flow of commerce can continue unimpeded. The Combined Maritime Forces, which I'm very much part of, and indeed proud of, is an enduring partnership of 33 willing nations, all with a common purpose to provide security and stability by conducting maritime security operations to hinder that malign non-state actor activity. Our area of operations covers 3.2 million square miles, which includes the Indian Ocean, the Red Sea and Gulf of Aden, to name but a few. As the UK commander of 150, I work with the other maritime commanders and teams from my partner nations to have a stabilising effect throughout the region. We build upon the diversity of our strengths, our varied experiences and expertise, our cultures, and the assets we can offer to the cause to improve maritime security in the region. We have a member nation from every inhabited continent on Earth, working together to a common goal. With a non-political mandate, nations are able to volunteer to conduct maritime security operations in line with their individual capacities and national permissioning to ensure that we are ready together. To achieve this, we have 3 task forces. 150 I command is responsible for maritime security and counter-terrorism. 151, currently commanded by the Republic of Korean Navy, is responsible for counter-piracy operations within our area of responsibility. And 152 is currently commanded by the Royal Jordanian Navy, which is responsible for maritime security in the Arabian Gulf, as well as building cooperation between regional nations and wider CMF. The activities of these forces are all coordinated by CMF headquarters based in the US Naval Support Facility in Bahrain. Our assets remain ready to respond to a number of other events at sea, which could include humanitarian and environmental crises. Even with this coalition of this scope and reach, we do not work in isolation. CMF achieves those results by working together, pooling those resources and actively supporting regional maritime forces patrolling their own maritime environment. We work incredibly closely with the EU Naval Forces Operation Atalanta, whose headquarters are currently based in Rota, Spain. We also coordinate and deconflict our counter-piracy efforts with other nations operating independently in the region, including India and China, to more effectively protect the internationally recognised transit corridor, or the IRTC, as it's more commonly known in the Gulf of Aden. This broad collaboration has ensured a constant presence of warships suppressing piracy, but let's not forget, the Somali pirates retain that capability and intent to conduct attacks, and in fact, there were 2 unsuccessful attacks in April of this year off the Horn of Africa. All those transiting the high-risk area should continue to abide by the industry guidance freely available in the best management practice, currently at edition 5. But it's not only continued piracy which CMF is tackling. In the last 12 months, CMF has seized more narcotics than ever before. And just for some data, in 2017 we seized 11 tons, in 2018 60 tons, and this year already 47 tons. This year's projections indicate there will likely be another increase in the proliferation of narcotics. Owing to the sheer size of the area over which smuggling occurs and the desire by smugglers to keep their activities secret, counter-trafficking is a very difficult assignment for a maritime force of any size. However, owing to our unique ability to pool resource, to share information, and coordinate a response, we have proven our ability to maximise that return on investment of participating nations. Complementing the work that CMF undertakes, some member states acting in a national capacity and independently engaging with regional partners are seeking to address the issue of illegal finish. By that I mean a practical, legal, and tangible conclusion to the maritime operations and interdictions, similar to what you heard yesterday from the Minister in the Seychelles, Her Excellency Mxuzi Mondo. Such a finish, if constructed appropriately, could disable the means through which entities engage in malign activity and could also provide that single, decisive deterrent to those considering embarking upon such activities. This is key to ensuring that these criminal and, by extension, terrorist networks are effectively disrupted beyond the interdiction of a single shipment. I invite you to consider the proposition that the arrest of criminals, the seizure of vessels, and the steady erosion of our adversaries' potential to wreak their havoc can offer a truly effective tonic to this ailment. However, any negotiations, potential agreements, and treaties which are ratified as a result are a matter for individual nations to develop and pursue in line with their legal and constitutional frameworks. But one can surely envisage the practical benefits of such endeavours. But what about the UK? The UK has recognised the challenges and threats posed in the Indian Ocean that have combined to put a demand signal in the Royal Navy for a continued presence in the region. Whether that's on national tasking, working on a bilateral basis, or under multilateral frameworks like the Combined Maritime Forces I've spoken about. The Royal Navy has a permanent presence in the Indian Ocean region through the UK Maritime Component Command, based in Bahrain, which is responsible for the Royal Navy's contribution to maritime security in the region. Here, we coordinate and lead the combined efforts of UK warships, aircraft, and over 1,000 deployed naval personnel in our joint operating area that stretches from the Red Sea to the Arabian Gulf and the Indian Ocean as far south as Tanzania. Throughout this area, we maintain UK warships at sea 365 days a year, and we also contribute officers in key leadership positions like the Deputy Commander of CMF, the Commander of 150, and the Chief of Staff to 151, amongst many others. We're also delighted to be one of the first nations to be joining India's Information Fusion Centre, and we look forward to our liaison officer joining soon. On the diplomatic stage, we're opening a new UK mission in the Maldives later this month. Karen Rossler will be the head of mission, who was the head of mission in the Seychelles and knows the region well. She is our blue economy environmental expert. In 2018, with the kind support of the Kingdom of Bahrain, the UK opened a permanent naval support facility, which enabled us to be more agile in supporting our deployed assets and personnel. And in the same year, HMS Dragon's deployment to the West Indian Ocean resulted in 8 drug seizures of 18 tons of narcotics with a street value of $200 million. We continue to work in deterrence and disruption of this illegal activity. This year, we have forward-based Attack 23 frigate, HMS Montrose, for 3 years to drive greater productivity and efficiency in operational outputs in the region. She arrived in Bahrain in April and has been busy conducting maritime security operations. Alongside this, Type 45 destroyer is currently deployed to Gulf, and a further frigate, HMS Ken, and destroyer HMS Defender have deployed from the UK and will leave HMS Duncan next week. We've announced we've joined the International Maritime Security Construct. Now, this mission is the international response to reassure the shipping industry and deter further attacks in light of the immediate threat to freedom of navigation. We're delighted to see Australia join the IMSC, and we'd like to see other nations join this shared approach to maintaining our collective security. Merchant ships must be free to travel lawfully and trade safely anywhere. This demonstrates our commitment to the maintenance of maritime security across the region, and by working together, greatly enhances our ability to operate across the Indian Ocean. Thanks also to our close relationship with the Sultan of Oman, we have committed to use Duqm in Oman as a regional training and logistics hub, including the future use of our new Queen Elizabeth-class aircraft carriers. From these locations, we are uniquely poised to conduct operations and look to strengthen our partnerships and interoperability by taking part in exercises with regional forces. And so, in closing, I'd like to make the following observations. I think we'd all agree the prominence of the Indian Ocean can never be understated. As far back as the 13th century, when Marco Polo set out to explore East Asia, nations had already been exchanging their wares for thousands of years using the monsoon winds of the Indian Ocean. Today, that ocean still hosts that vital trade and links to civilization, but it is far more densely populated, contested, and exploited by malign actors who would wish to challenge the rules-based order and everyday norms in the maritime domain. Their persistence and avarice knows no bounds, and therefore, the need for successful maritime security operations across the Indian Ocean region to have access to lawful actors, disrupt malfeasance, and protect the free flow of commerce will endure. As I have said, it's imperative we continue to look for innovative, imaginative, and inventive ways to work in partnership and friendship with you all to grow our economies and protect our national security. Your security is our security too. So both the UK and CMF are fully committed to the enduring task of conducting maritime security operations in the region, and we welcome all nations who share a common interest to join us. Indeed, our relationships have a proven success in deterrence and countering of illicit activity in our areas of operation. And I, for one, have been hugely encouraged by the open and honest debate in this conference, which will hope to build on our joint successes so far. Thank you.
Thank you, Commodore Edward. Questions, please, audience. Yes, sir. Air Marshal Mukherjee.
Narcotics. I guess your intelligence inputs for intercepting narcotics would be more through human intelligence rather than technological equipment. What is your success rate from the inputs that you get to the interceptions that you make?
So thank you for that question. You won't be surprised to learn that our intelligence is all source intelligence, taking it from a number of different avenues and sources. We did some analysis on looking at maritime security in that region of 3.2 million square miles. And we looked at having a ship with a helicopter embarked, so you've got extended search capability. We were looking at 70 plus ships if we were to provide 100% coverage of the Indian Ocean, and even then, it's not guaranteed. So I will say, sir, if I may, in terms of intelligence, we'll use that intelligence to lead us to the right conclusion. But all I can say is it is intelligence from all sorts of sources.
Please give the mic.
Check. Good evening, sir. My name is Wing Commander Vikas. I'm working with India Foundation. Famous historian and scholar of geopolitical science, Mr. K.M. Panikkar, in 1945, he said that the Indian Ocean region is a magnanimous British lake. And the Indian Navy, after India being independent, for next 5 to 6 decades, have to work with British Navy to become a blue water navy. Over the years, the British Navy...
Can you just come to the question? We're running out of time, please. Yeah.
Yes, sir. The concept that he coined was that India needs to make a ring of steel from the island of Socotra through Ceylon to Malay, which in today's time is Gulf of Aden to Straits of Malacca via Sri Lanka. What do you think India with the friendly nations working on this concept of steel of ring? Because if we do not, the pearl of string might encircle us and strangle us.
Very interesting point. And I think you're right about the ring of steel that will oppose those malign actors. But I think, well, I'll go back to what I said in the speech about this cooperation, this information sharing, this maritime domain awareness and a full fusion picture. If you can imagine, if you put all the independent deployers into the Indian Ocean and they all had one interest in one part of the ocean, it would be a very busy part of the ocean. What we need to do, whether we're involved in those coalitions, alliances and partnerships, or we are not, for whatever reason, we need to, as I go back to saying, we need to be inventive, innovative, imaginative and clever. If you spread those forces out by cooperating, what it means is you will have that level of deterrence. So your ring of steel becomes that extended ring of steel, and hopefully the 70 ships that I pray for will have that effect.
Thank you, Commodore Edward. Thank you very much. May I call upon Mr. Arindam Mukherjee to kindly come up to stage and present a token of India Foundation to him. Let me now invite General Abdullah Shamaal, the Chief of Defense Force of Maldives. Well, he is a scholar soldier. He has got number of master's degree, from various universities, highly qualified and highly operational man. He was the first military attaché of Maldives to India. Welcome, CDF.
Thank you very much for the kind words. I think that was a bit slightly exaggerated, but anyway, thank you. Excellencies, respected chair, fellow panelists, distinguished participants, ladies and gentlemen, assalamu alaikum and a very good evening. At the outset, let me thank the international delegates for being here with us. I hope that you all had a lovely time and that you will be taking fond memories of your brief time here. We are really pleased that you are here, but it is quite unfortunate that your time is confined to this small hall. Rather, you should be there on the beach, actually. And I hope that you will get some time to jump into the water and take a quick dip. Well, and I can assure you there aren't many sharks there. I also thank the India Foundation and the organizers of this forum for giving me the opportunity to share my thoughts on the contemporary security and strategic imperatives. Eminent speakers have talked extensively over the past 2 days about various aspects of this theme and have given us very valuable insights, which makes my job actually here much easier. Therefore, in the interest of keeping to the time, I will try and keep my remarks as brief as possible. I will briefly set the contextual framework by looking at some of the fundamental strategic paradigm shifts that are taking place, including the salience of the Indo-Pacific shift, and then move on to threats and challenges we are faced with. I will close by looking at solutions, rather possible cooperative options, central to which is cooperation and coordination. We all recognize that the strategic and security environment is highly volatile and ambiguous, with complex and interlinked threats and challenges that create uncertainty for statesmen and practitioners. A main cause of this volatility is intense socio-economic as well as military competition among near-peer competitors, namely dominant states, resurgent powers, and rising or revisionist powers. I use the term competitor, not adversary, because decades of economic interdependence have created deep entanglements that, if disrupted, would create immeasurable economic damage to all states, as evidenced by recent fluctuations in the major stock markets. There is undeniable competition to secure access to markets and resources, deny the same access to others, propagate socio-political ideologies, and redefine the rules of the international system. Recently, we witnessed a major realignment of the United States strategy for the Indian Ocean region with the establishment of the Indo-Pacific Command. I believe this is a natural convergence of interests on the part of major regional and international players that fits quite neatly into India's Look East and Act East policies, as well as China's economic network of Belt and Road Initiative and the Maritime Silk Route. This shift is also a necessary one, given the strategic imperatives, economic significance, and the sheer human potential within the greater Indian Ocean region. When talking about paradigm shifts, we must also remember that these seismic shifts are created because of intense pressures on the system. Two main drivers of not only present violence, but future conflicts and unrest, as I see them, are climate change and refugees or forcibly displaced persons. Both these create immense pressures on national economies, infrastructure, human populations, and state resources, including on military forces. What is more pertinent to this forum is that both these are real and present dangers in the greater Indian Ocean region and is likely to exacerbate in the coming years. Social media and supporting technology are major enablers of the system and having radically transformed how we conduct all human interactions, including commerce, research, education, and even personal relations. While technology itself is benign and has made our lives infinitely easier, we are witnessing its use by various interest groups to shape public opinion, intrude on personal privacy, radicalize and indoctrinate our youth, and influence policy decisions by acting outside the normal established norms. This is the complex environment that security practitioners, military strategists, and statesmen have to conduct policy in. Warfare, as we know it, is also undergoing a radical transformation, with the decline of large-scale wars moving away from conventional methods and an increase in war amongst the people. Here I have taken the liberty of quoting famous, who is considered as a modern-day Clausewitz, General retired Rupert Smith's famous thesis on the utility of forces limited in the modern-day era. What we are talking about now are a vast array of highly interconnected threats and challenges that are hybrid in nature, which span across legal, quasi-legal, and illegal and illicit activities that are run in support of malicious intentions. We are all familiar with the crime-terror nexus, but there are multiple nexuses and symbiotic relations similar to these nexuses. For instance, human trafficking, smuggling, and money laundering are all highly interconnected in the sense that these threats all share the same ungoverned spaces and exploit the same security loopholes. Cyberspace is also such an ungoverned space that is exploited by organized criminal entities that thrive under anonymity. Cyber attacks that target government agencies, industry, and intrude on personal privacy are today rampant. Violent extremists and radical entities are also equal opportunity users of cyberspace for propaganda in order to attract funding, radicalize and indoctrinate vulnerable segments of our societies, and spread divisive and incendiary rhetoric. We are all too familiar with the menace of terrorism in the region, and there has been an increasing confluence and a growing symbiotic relationship between these illicit network and non-state and sub-state terror organizations that are still present in the region. With the strategic setting so volatile and ambiguous, and the threats symbiotic, highly adaptive and hybrid in nature, what should our strategy be to confront them? At the national level, I believe that we all recognize the importance of unified action across the whole of government and whole of society apparatuses. This would bring to bear the unique expertise and capabilities of government agencies, including joint military forces, other non-military law enforcement agencies together. For instance, ministries and departments such as education, Islamic affairs, youth and sports, gender and social services, and the Home Ministry are key line agencies in our efforts in Maldives to prevent and counter the spread of violent extremist ideologies. We recognize that the center of gravity of this movement is its ideology, and that it must be dealt with through a consolidated and a much more holistic approach that incorporates security and law enforcement, education, economic, youth development, and civic engagements. Military forces are now moving towards interestingly towards multi-domain operations as a means of countering much less understood hybrid threats, given the strategic context of our region per se that I shared earlier, as well as the threat vectors. We envisage the need for a lot or much more intense multinational and multi-agency-led humanitarian assistance and disaster relief operations in the future. And this is where regional response mechanisms are crucial and essential. At the regional level, we have existing mechanisms for regional security cooperation, but I believe these need to be augmented through more regular interactions, joint multinational exercises, and exchange programs to build all-round capacity and capability. A common operating picture is rather essential, is a common framework to ensure heterogeneous interoperability during crises and operations. Given the fluidity with which the threat vectors move across international borders, our systems must be designed to facilitate easy flow of information and intelligence capabilities and expertise. Such a framework requires a collective understanding of risk, capabilities, and capacities that we each contribute, how best to leverage our strategic locations and assets. It must also contain mechanisms to facilitate regional intelligence sharing and intelligence fusioning, which we are talking about teaming up of machines and human beings. We are seeing rapid advancements in artificial intelligence, quantum computing, and in the field of robotics and autonomous and semi-autonomous systems. These developments must be brought to bear to increase our intelligence and surveillance capabilities, maritime domain awareness, predictive policing, smart screening at high-risk locations, and for guarding and protecting our critical national infrastructures. From your time in the Maldives, I'm sure you would have an appreciation of our unique geography and the demands for enhanced surveillance for coastal protection, maritime domain awareness, and to respond effectively to far-flung and quite isolated islands. These demands can only be met through technology investments. Last but not the least, collaborative arrangements for security require open dialogue and quite frank discussions within cooperative structures. We must clearly communicate on how we can each contribute to the regional and international security without compromising our national interests. We need strategic leadership to stock of our collective capacity and capabilities, formulate mechanisms to ensure heterogeneous interoperability, and deploy our resources within a much more collaborative structure. Given the lack of time, and it's already in the evening, I would not want to spoil this beautiful evening. I will try and end here, but before I step down again, I would like to once again extend my sincere thanks to India Foundation and for the unique opportunity provided. Thank you very much.
Thank you, CDF, and we'll spare you any question from the audience since you know that time is short, except to just make one observation that speaker after speaker, particularly this morning, Mr. M.J. Akbar mentioned about the ideology aspect of this de-radicalization or radicalization. So I'm glad that you have a focus on the very right thing your neighboring countries are thinking. And I'm sure there's going to be more useful cooperative engagement in future. Can I call upon Mrs. Ayushi Ketkar to come to the stage and present a token of our appreciation to the Chief of Defense Force of Maldives. Thank you, General. Thank you. May I invite the last speaker of the day and the conference, but not the least, Rear Admiral Mahesh Singh. He is the flag officer of Karwar, Karnataka of the Indian Navy. He has had very illustrious career. It's all given on the screen. He's been in command of Mirghane, and the only real LPD that we have in the Navy, the Jalashwa. I had the good fortune of sailing on board for a little while. He has been the Chief Operation Officer of the headquarters of Eastern Naval Command. Your views?
Thank you, sir. Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen. Being the last speaker at a conference where you have been debating Indian Ocean security for last 2 days, I think there is very little for me to say. I wish I could just say ditto and walk off. But that notwithstanding, as a practicing naval officer, I thought it would be appropriate for me to bring to you the challenges in the IOR that we see whilst being at sea, and bring to you a recent initiative by India and the Indian Navy of setting up an information fusion center, which most of the speakers this morning have been alluding to. I have structured my talk and interlaced it with a couple of slides, primarily because pictures speak more than words. And more importantly, being the last speaker, I seek to draw your attention at least on the slides. Having said that, I would be covering my presentation. Can I have a... I'll be covering the presentation under the heads as flashed. I will briefly touch upon the maritime environment as I see it as a naval officer and what are the challenges that I face. And then I shall give you an insight into the IFC, the concept behind it and what we seek to achieve from it. Now, as has been spoken by many of the speakers, you all would agree that the global security environment has changed dramatically over the past decade. Today, threats are dynamic, unpredictable, diverse, networked, and constantly evolving. As one gazes at the Indian Ocean, this has not been a mistake in presenting it, it's a deliberate attempt just to show you that when you look at the Indian Ocean from the landward side, you realize the centrality that is associated with this Indian Ocean. The Indian Ocean continues to remain and is the only connection, I repeat, it is the only connection between the economic prosperity of the West and the aspirations for it in the East. In an increasingly globalized world, it is imperative for the two to meet and amalgamate together for lasting peace. Despite a rush to enhance connectivity over land through expressways for trade and pipelines for oil and gas, a simple calculation of comparative costs and effort of transportation will always make the sea a preferred medium for the foreseeable future. The statistics of types and number of ships that traverse through the vital shipping lanes of the Indian Ocean region indicates that they sustain economic activity and enable prosperity across the world. Coming to the security challenges that are being faced in this area. Today, the security of the region faces challenges largely from non-state actors and in some cases from state-sponsored non-state actors. In the central and western parts of the Indian Ocean, excessive fishing by out-of-region vessels and depletion of fish stocks threaten the way of life of numerous citizens of the IOR nation states. This is further compounded by illegal, unregulated, and unrestricted fishing within the EZ of smaller nations. Another area of serious concern is the unregulated carriage of armed guards on board merchant ships. There are close to 140 private security companies operating in the North Indian Ocean, which hire out privately armed security personnel. These personnel shift between vessels at sea without entering any port or coastal state-regulated maritime territory. There are scores of ships operating as floating armories outside any coastal state's jurisdiction. This has a serious security risk and requires to be closely watched by all the navies. In the northern parts of the Indian Ocean region, human trafficking continues to remain a threat to peace and stability of the region. This flow of illegal migrants across national borders can quickly transform from a humanitarian crisis associated movement to other than one which has ramifications on security of the nation. We have been victims of maritime terrorism not too far back. The 26/11 attacks in Mumbai and the lives lost are a reminder to us every day of the dangers associated with the misuse of the great commons. While the freedom of the use of seas exists and is well respected, the illegal use of the seas is what we seek to dissuade and deter. All the challenges that I have spoken of thus far have one common thread that bridges them. They are all transnational. The threats that they pose and the geography they inhabit crosses traditional borders of enforcement and policing. It is only natural, therefore, that the response to these challenges has to go beyond traditional boundaries of national jurisdiction. India realizes that maritime challenges being transnational in nature and the spectrum of threat no longer being limited to the immediate environment or particular entity, one nation alone would not be able to counter it single-handedly and therefore requires a global response in a coordinated manner. The Indian Navy has been endeavoring to tackle these challenges with a multi-pronged approach. The setting up of the Information Fusion Center, IOR, is one such initiative. The need to establish the Information Fusion Center, Indian Ocean region, stems from the importance of the Indian Ocean to the world trade, which I had alluded to in the beginning, and security, and for the various maritime nations and organizations to collaborate towards enhancing maritime safety and security of the seas. The transnational dimension of the maritime challenges calls for a shared awareness for securing the maritime commons. Such collaboration will be aimed at utilizing the collective wisdom and resources towards addressing myriad challenges in the region. It is to this collective endeavor that the IFC IOR has been modeled with the primary objective of keeping global commons a conduit of prosperity and economic well-being of all legitimate users. Towards addressing the need of strengthening the regional maritime security, the Government of India has established the Information Fusion Center, the Indian Ocean region, or the IFC IOR, which was inaugurated by the Honorable Defense Minister of India on 22nd December last year. The center is located at Gurugram, approximately 20 kilometers west of Delhi. The center is aimed to function as a platform where multiple friendly nations can freely exchange non-sensitive information from the maritime domain. Initially, the IFC IOR has been launched as a virtual center. Presently, the information exchange is being undertaken by virtual means using an indigenously developed collaborative tool, telephone calls, faxes, emails, and video conferencing over the internet. In addition, a dedicated website is being maintained for quicker dissemination of information to partners and maritime community at large. Within a short span of 8 months, the center has developed extensive linkages with the points of contacts in 18 countries and 15 multinational maritime security centers. Regular exchanges of requests of information or RFIs is being actively undertaken with the various maritime stakeholders. The center is also publishing a monthly report, Monthly Maritime Security Update, which is being shared with all the partners on a regular basis. As white shipping information forms the basis of information, operationalization of white shipping information exchange agreements with partner nations is being actively pursued with 36 countries and 3 multinational constructs. The information sharing mechanism at IFC IOR is premised on the 3 cornerstones, which are also interlinked. The mechanism is focused on promoting capacity and confidence building amongst partner nations, thereby ensuring swift and accurate exchange of information pertaining to maritime security. Maintaining extensive and continuous linkages to ensure comprehensive awareness of the region, thereby achieving transparency of the environment. Leveraging on high-tech state-of-art methods and analytical tools to undertake traffic analysis, thereby ensuring that any emerging threat and trends are predicted in time. All this is to facilitate incident management so that any threat is identified in time to ensure queuing operational response. The center aims to develop comprehensive maritime domain awareness by consolidating and collaborating with our partners and to lay the foundation stone for the same. It conducted the inaugural Maritime Information Sharing Workshop 2019 from 12th to 13th June this year. The workshop saw active participation from representatives of almost 30 countries to fight the threat of regional peace and stability. In conclusion, I would like to state that India and Indian Navy remains committed to ensuring safety and to further this shared vision of peace and prosperity for all. Thank you.
Thank you, Admiral Mahesh Singh. And maintaining transparency of time will not load you with any question. May I invite Mr. Makrand Pranjape to kindly come up? And present a token of our appreciation to Admiral Mahesh Singh. Vote of thanks. Yeah, photograph. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for being here. Let me invite Mr. Shaurya Doval. He is on the Board of Governors of the India Foundation to make the vote of thanks.
Thank you. The last 1.5 days, we just late by 3 hours, by 3 minutes, considering that we covered 56 speakers from 36 countries in the last 1.5 days. Overshooting our schedule by 3 minutes is quite an achievement in itself. But, I'd like to propose a vote of thanks, which brings to close the 4th Indian Ocean Conference. It would not have been possible without the support and help of many people. I would like to thank them in the order. Of course, their contributions have varied in different order, but I'd first like to thank His Excellency Ibrahim Mohammed Saleh, President of Maldives, and his entire team. I'd like to thank the chair of the organizing committee, His Excellency Ranil Wickremesinghe, Prime Minister of Sri Lanka, the three vice chairs, the foreign ministers of India, Maldives, and Singapore, and their teams, all our distinguished speakers, including ministers, officials, and scholars from 36 countries, all our distinguished delegates who came from over 40 countries, all departments of the government of Maldives, our co-hosts, RSIS and FOSIM, all our sponsors, CCL India, ONGC Videsh Limited, Reliance Industries, and all others, media from Maldives, India, and all across, and finally, our hospitality partners, Paradise Island Resort and Spa, Kurumba Maldives, and Sheraton Maldives, Full Moon Resort and Spa. I would like to apologize for any inconvenience caused to the speakers and delegates, and I hope we will see many of you again next year someplace in the Indian Ocean region for the 5th Indian Ocean Conference. Thank you very much. That, as always, will remain an announcement sometime next year. Thank you very much.